Each scene in a transition is defined in an XML layout file. These are the same kinds of files that you use to define activity layouts, so if you're adding the Transitions framework to an existing app, you can start with your existing layouts. In this project named Transition Scenes, my main activity class uses a file called activitymain.xml. It has a frame layout that includes another layout file called Scene1. This file, Scene1, has 3 image views, each with a different color, and they're positioned at different places on the screen. And the file looks like this. So if I run the app in its current state, it simply shows that activity with that layout showing the 3 colored rectangles. Now, I'm going to jump to the directory containing scene1.xml and show that I have a second layout file called scene2.xml. I'll expand the size of the screen to make it easier to look at. Then I'll switch back and forth between the 2 scenes. And you can see the rectangles have been repositioned on the screen in the second scene. Right now, this second layout file isn't included anywhere in the app, but we'll use it in some upcoming transitions. My next step is to define a transition. You can do this either in Java or XML, but the XML version is typically more readable and maintainable. It goes into a resource directory named Transition. I'll go to my resources directory and create that new directory, and I'll name it Transition. And as with all resource directory names, you must follow this exact naming convention. Then I'll go to that new Transition directory, and I'll right-click and choose New, and I see that the default option is Transition Resource File. I'll name the file my_transition.xml. The default root element for this file is called Transition Manager, but that's not really what I want. I want to create something called a transition set. So I'll rename the root element. Then within the root element, I'll add a child element named Change Bounds. As I start typing, you can see a number of options are available, and I'll simply autocomplete the tag. So that's my transition file. Change bounds means that when I want to move objects from one spot on the screen to another, instead of simply moving suddenly or abruptly, they'll be animated. Next, I'll create another XML file for my transition manager. And once again, it goes into this transition directory. I'll right-click and choose New Transition Resource File, and I'll name it Manager.xml. Now this time I do want the root element of Transition Manager, and within the Transition Manager, I'm going to define a transition. The transition will define a from scene and a to scene, and each of these attributes will point to a layout file. So I'll choose the layout directory, and I'll say I'm going from scene 2 to scene 1. And then I'll indicate which transition I want to use. I'll choose the transition attribute, and I'll point to @transition, and then my transition. And so I'm saying when I go from scene 2 to scene 1, I want to animate the change based on the definition of this file. So now I've defined my transition, and I've defined my transition manager. And I'm ready for the next step, running the animations with Java code. And I'll show you how to do that in another video.